Going live. And there we go. All right, everyone, here is Luciano Oliveira, Oliveira Lawyers. Today we have here a guest. His name is Jerry Nardini from the United States. How you doing, Jerry?
I'm doing great, thanks.
All
Nice to
right.
be here.
Well, welcome to our channel, Jerry, and thank you so much. Jerry is being very generous. We did assist Jerry with some immigration issues he had, but he's entirely here, like to contribute to some ideas and to let us understand and share a little bit more about, the reasons why foreign citizens pick Brazil as a destination. So, Jerry, you chose Brazil for what? Like, I mean, you're not a digital nomad. I believe, as far as I can tell, you actually are in Brazil under the retirement visa. Is that correct, Jerry?
Yeah, that's right. hmm
And
Um, yeah, I wanted to retire here. I came here about 20 years ago, and I went to Rio first. And really, my main experience was in Rio, and now I'm in São Paulo, which I like a lot better. It's less touristed, and I like the people, the cost of living. I had been taking vacations in Europe and decided I hadn't seen enough of South America, and I did next to no research before I went to Rio. And when I got there, I found a bunch of fun Americans who were flying to other cities and just really enjoying themselves and also slowly learning the language. And I thought, this looks like a really fun lifestyle. So I started to come back on an annual basis for a couple of weeks at a time, and ultimately retired here 4 years ago.
that's interesting. So this is not something that you decided like in a single moment. Maybe it was something that was growing over time. You said like the first time you came to Brazil was 20 years ago, right?
That's right.
And then
Yeah,
you visited, like usually, for instance, are going to start with Rio de Janeiro. So that was your natural first choice, and eventually started to go places like, in addition, just curious, like in addition to Rio and São Paulo, was there any other region? Like, have you been to the Northeast, Amazon, Florianopolis?
I haven't been to either of those places, but I have been up north. Uh, Recently, I was in Bahia. I've been to Fortaleza. I, uh, I liked Bahia. It's a different vibe there. Uh, as it seems most of the different states that I can fly to very easily and reach within 2 hours, I can get to most of the Brazilian cities and places and beaches that I want to go to that are on my list. I've been to Curitiba, which I like very much. Uh, it has wonderful parks and looks a whole lot more like America. Um, and It's just more organized and well laid out. Uh, I've been to Buenos Aires is also very close, so you can hop over the border and see that and experience that. But I've liked everywhere I've gone. Uh, the beaches are are just they're breathtaking. They're really something to see. If you're a beach person, uh, I'm not, but I obviously can attest to how the romantic settings are definitely worth a visit.
That's great. So, correct me if I'm wrong. Like, you probably like São Paulo in addition to to other reasons, but because it also gives you access, easy access to any place, like in Brazil. Like, if you want to go to Bahia, you just take a flight. Like, there is the airport of Guarulhos, there is the airport of I forgot the name of the other one, the main one, like
Congonhas.
the Congonhas. Yeah, the Congonhas is the look at that. You're learning more about São Paulo than I do, Jerry. Look at that. There is the Congonhas, which is like a smaller one, right? Like if we compare to New York City, would be LaGuardia, and then we have Guarulhos, which would be JFK, like the big one, and that's actually where most of the international flights are gonna arrive in Brazil. So I completely understand. Like you are in São Paulo, you have a lot of conveniences, but at the same time you have easy access to any areas in Brazil, right, Jerry?
Yeah, I love that fact. I am 5 minutes from the airport and then 2 hours from anywhere else, and there's not long lines. It's a very convenient setup for domestic flying. Very convenient.
Got it. And what is your current setup like in São Paulo? Like, are you? And I know you are like you've been like coming to Brazil for a while, but you are correct me if I'm wrong. Like at the beginning of your retirement journey in Brazil. So do you have like are you renting an apartment? Are you sharing an apartment? Are you planning to just rent? Or to try a neighborhood out and maybe to settle later on, like where are you in your journey regarding like real estate and a base location?
I'm open to all manner of lodgings. It's just that I have found myself staying in hotels exclusively uh, because I like waking up to a number of different services, maid service, and these elaborate breakfasts, and uh, just the ability to travel without paying rent in a different place. Uh, I haven't used Airbnb. I'm concerned about cleanliness and the quality of the mattress, and when things are broken, whether or not they'll get fixed. So I've stayed away from them, although I could probably cut my lodging bill in half easily by staying at Airbnb. Everyone wonders why I don't. Um, but my hotel is convenient to the gym and my masseuse, and other my friends in the neighborhood. I like the neighborhood, and it's the nicest hotel in the neighborhood, and is large enough with a small kitchen, and it suits my needs. Um, there are much nicer places in Sao Paulo to stay, uh, but on a par, uh, it's you get better, I think, uh, deals in other countries, like in Asia, for example. But I would say the lodging is about 30%, 40% less the hotel costs. I'm usually spend uh, 200 in the U.S. and about a hundred or so to stay in Brazil now. That number has been going up. It was a lot less, but I think in terms of inflation, hotels is probably one area that's been has gone up more than anything else.
That's very
So
interesting. And what about food? Like, I mean, do you enjoy Brazilian food? Like, I mean, how do you plan for your meals? Like, I mean, for those who do not know, a major staple in Brazilian culinary is going to be rice and beans. Okay, rice and beans. It's super common, particularly for like the everyday Brazilian. Like it's super common for a Brazilian to have rice and beans for both lunch and dinner, and that could go like for not only the entire week, but actually many people, if not most people, they're gonna have rice and beans for the entire month, like with some, few exceptions. And I'm talking about the staples, right? Like, I mean, so it's not just like rice and beans. There are different plates or different combinations. Like when you go to a restaurant, they bring you the menu, and then you're gonna see, right, like different options. But the rice and beans is a major constant, and you can see, rice and beans with a steak, or with with chicken and other variations. But how do you interact with the Brazilian culinary, Jerry?
Um, well, it's funny. You, I just talked to a Brazilian who moved back here because they couldn't get rice and beans in the U.S. So they're they're
Look at
very
that.
passionate about that. They miss it. I tend not to eat like a Brazilian. I uh, enjoy a number of Japanese restaurants here. There's a significant Japanese population, so you see that. Italian restaurants. I eat out almost uh, in, entirely. I would say 100% of the time, practically. I mean, but I'm particular about which restaurants I go to. Uh, just across the street from my hotel is a very large mall with a lot of food options. Brazilians are very big on their malls. They'll get dressed up, and it's an event, I think, for them, as opposed to in the U.S. There's a very nice Argentinian uh, restaurant I like, um, because they have a nice way with vegetables and a decent salad. As you know, in addition to rice and beans, the Brazilians are very focused on barbecue and meat. And by barbecue, I mean more salted rather than sweet sauces like the U.S. Um, I like to eat in a variety of different restaurants, which you will find here. You'll find a Thai restaurant, um, and the as an example, but there's not a lot of Mexican restaurants. I mean, very few. Uh, I didn't I didn't see any in Rio, and I've only seen one or two here in São Paulo. It was something I missed, but I got over it. The only thing I miss is salads, and I do like shopping at Whole Foods, where you have so much uh, selection. Uh, so those are the two things I miss. Other Americans will say they miss American pizza. It's made a little bit different here, although I haven't researched it enough. There are plenty of Italian restaurants, um, but I try to get around the neighborhood uh, called Jardins, which uh, means gardens in Portuguese. Is a has just a, a, a lot of different restaurants. I mean, in one more exotic and romantic than the next, with just it, it looks like you're entering a rainforest, and the lighting is very sophisticated here, much more than the U.S. And the furniture is also very chic. Uh, a lot of it's made here, and I'm a big fan of Brazilian style. So the aesthetics of the restaurants are, are exciting for me. They use a lot of brick and tile, and just um, unique. One's more unique than the other. So it's fine dining is kind of one of my pastimes. In fact, if you go to the very highest end of dining here in Sao Paulo is where you'll find the largest cost difference. Say from Manhattan, if you had a $300 meal in Manhattan, it would be about $90 in Sao Paulo. That's been my experience between that's the largest contrast in cost. but I tend not to go to the typical Brazilian, say, lunch place where they have rice and beans and the typical Brazilian fare. But I will go to the places where they weigh your food. It's like a big salad bar with another section where they grill meat, and everything is done by weight. And so you can pick and choose and get exactly what you want on that plate, and it makes for a very nice lunch. I ate that way almost exclusively when I was in Rio and wanting to stay fit and such. And so, um, so
That's
that's
a
how I.
great overview, Jerry. Yeah. So the weight style meals, like in Portuguese, we call per kilo or
Yeah.
restaurante por kilo, right? Per
Uh-huh.
kilo.
Yeah.
Like in Brazil, we don't weight like in pounds. We do by kilos, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it ends up like becoming like a kind of category, like per kilo or by kilo restaurants. They are usually for people who like if you don't have a lot of time. Actually, at the beginning of the creation of such restaurants, the idea was you just get in, you pick your food, you can decide what you're gonna have at any combination, right? Like, and you just pay a single fee per kilo, right? And there you go. Nowadays, the experience is becoming more sophisticated. So you do have like those for like type of blue collar workers, and you do have some that are going to be more sophisticated. So you have like a choice for everyone. In terms of pizza, yes, that it's very different in Brazil. Is interesting that Jerry was mentioning in Brazil, people are gonna eat pizza with a fork and knife, right, Jerry? Have you
Yeah.
tried to eat without a fork and knife by chance? No,
I have
right?
not. I have
Because
not.
it's
And
like
it's strange for them.
yeah, because it's not as steady, like it's not like something firm. It's more like very flexible type of pizza. So you do need like a fork and knife. And at least us Brazilians, we believe that the Brazilian pizza is way better than the US one. But for those who miss like the US pizza, a tip is like if you search, like if you Google New York style pizza, that's how we Brazilians refer to the US style pizza, right? New York style pizza. That's just how it started in Brazil. Nowadays, if you Google, like in São Paulo, you're probably gonna find maybe a half a dozen places who are gonna prepare the pizza in the same style you would find in the United States, and then you don't need to use like a fork and knife. But elsewhere, you do need a fork and knife. Otherwise, you're not gonna be able to eat pizza. Okay. Let me take a look at their chat. The 552, welcome the 552. Awesome stream. Thank you, the 552. We have Ryan Schaefer. The previous stream with Mark was great. However, it ended early last time. You're absolutely right, Ryan. We had an issue with Riverside. We use Riverside as our stream platform for interviews. Something happened with Riverside, but Mark is going to be back, and we're going to let you guys know in advance so you can join us for another session with Mark. Kitwell, Katie, how you doing? Thank you for showing. Here is a question for Jerry. Como vai, Jerry? Do you plan to try to obtain citizenship in a few years? Another question from Kate. How do you find your general safety in Sao Paulo? Any practices different from the US? So, a couple of questions. The first one, let's tackle the citizenship. So, do you have a citizenship in mind? I know, again, you are kind of at the beginning of your resident journey in Brazil, but you have plans for citizenship? Anything on that front?
Um, I'm taking it in stages that would ultimately grant me citizenship. I hadn't thought that far out. I think that process would put me a decade out from now. I certainly don't want to give up my American citizenship. Right now, I have temporary residency, which is good for 1 year. Um, and when I renew it, I think I'll be given 2 years, and I believe that renewal process is just a matter of proving my income. And then on that second time of my renewal, I think they give me another 9 years. So I tend not to make plans, further out than a few months, much less a decade from now. But I would say probably uh, yes, dual citizenship would be very nice. I always feel sad when I have to go back to the States. Prior to receiving my uh, residency, my temporary residency, I was limited to 6 months, which involved, after 90 days, having my passport extended uh, in order to stay the additional 3 months without being fined or causing any problems coming and going. Um, and the so that's how I feel about
Got it. And
citizenship.
what about you? Would you mind telling us the visa that you applied for? Like I know the visa, but I'm asking you because it's
Yeah,
your information.
it, it was a retirement visa.
Was a retirement
Um,
visa? Yeah, that's another question from Ryan. How did Jerry move to Brazil? Did he get married, or was it through Viper, digital nomad? So answer for Ryan. It was true for the retirement visa, right, Jerry?
yes, it was for the retirement visa. hmm And
Okay.
the lifestyle that I have here,
Yeah,
I really enjoy. I meet interesting people from around the world, uh, mainly Americans, but others are pass through Sao Paulo on business. There's a number of digital nomads here, um, but on occasion I get invited to wherever their travel destination or home is. I have been to New Zealand. I've been invited to Europe, and when I get invited, I tend to go. So this is a nice jumping off point for me because I do want to continue to travel a great deal over the next decade, uh, or maybe even longer. So I wasn't getting these invites in my uh, own country, which was California, but now I'm more uh, geared towards Utah. I'm enjoying those mountains, but uh, my plan is to move around, stay mainly in hotels, uh, and keep moving. It's fun.
that's great.
I've met pilots that travel all over the world all of the time, and so I look forward to meeting up with them in some pretty exotic locations as well.
That's a great lifestyle. So I'm gonna get back to Casey on the safety because Ryan has a question connected to the visa. Ryan, or actually is Ali. Ali is asking how long did the whole retirement visa take from the beginning to the end, right? So when you decide I'm gonna apply to when the visa was actually issued, Jerry, how many months did it take for you to get there?
Let's see. Um, it was about 4, and I started off with a different immigration lawyer here in Sao Paulo, and he wasn't able to answer my questions in a matter of fact way like Luciano did, and kind of saved me in the process. Uh, at one point, but I started last August, and by December, they had printed my uh, visa in the official newspaper. So Luciano uh, informed me that I could return to the country, whereas my other lawyer uh, wanted me to adhere to my tourist visa, which requires I stay out of the country for 6 months, which I was very much dreading because I enjoy Brazil a great deal, from the people mainly, but many other things. The various services that um, are here that are inexpensive. Um, it's, for example, my personal trainer is $30 an hour. In the U.S., it would probably be 2 or 3 times more. Um, so that's very motivating. My masseuse is also one of the best I've ever had, if not the best, and she's $30 an hour. And in Utah, uh, the I was looking at, $300 an hour. So I didn't do that. So I was gonna also missed you know that part, and I miss my friends here. They're from all different professions that I wouldn't normally encounter in the US. I'm meeting doctors and lawyers and software engineers and IT people. I mean, the various digital nomads that are here are quite uh, interesting to talk to. There's pilots, um, and in some cases they want me to uh, show them around or inform them about the culture, since I've in total have stayed here since the beginning, probably close to 40 to 50 months. And I have studied the language. I'm very dedicated. Uh, Although I did not have Spanish to begin with, which would have been a big help, I did have French, which has helped. But if someone wanted to learn the language and ingratiate themselves to Brazilians, they're very, very forgiving of my language mistakes and my accent. Uh, and so it's one of the pleasures of being here. Um, Even though it's a large city with lots of things to do and places to see, it feels like a collection of smaller towns that aren't so urban. It's São Paulo, unless you're in the downtown specifically, uh, has many neighborhoods. And the neighborhood that I'm in, I feel extremely safe. Uh, I'm here in their winter, mostly have been, which is June to November. It gets dark early, say around 5 o'clock. So I'm mostly coming and going at night. Um, and I have rarely felt unsafe. Um, and, and I would say no more unsafe than being in the US for Sao Paulo. Uh, Rio, in the highly touristed areas like Copacabana, I would have a different answer for that. You wouldn't want to go walking out on the beach at midnight, as an example. Uh, but none of that, for me at least, in Sao Paulo. There's a very nice metro. My friend uses all the time and encourages me, although I'm more of a fan of Uber. Um, and the Uber is it's inexpensive. Most of my Uber trips uh, are under $10. Um, so I like that. It's very, very convenient. But the the metro system, I think for $1 you can go as far as you want in many, many directions. Um, so there's that. Um, but the whole time I have felt very safe during those 40, 50 months, and I have had no negative experiences. Conversely, if you wear a bunch of jewelry and you're in Copacabana, Rio, and it's at midnight, I think you're asking, a poor younger male, on a bike to, take your jewelry. You're inviting trouble. So I think most of the people that have issues, uh, were participants in not doing basic safety measures in major touristed areas where there's a population of lower class people. I think that's just common sense all over South America,
Right.
Central America, America itself. There's just in every major city, there's places you don't go at night alone. Um, so,
That's great sharing. And Jerry, so maybe to complement, like in São Paulo, do you still follow some like safety basic kind of common knowledge ideas such as not wearing jewelry, like maybe not using your cell phone on the street. Like, I mean, the cell phone is, even in Sao Paulo with this great sharing from Jerry, I would say ideally you're not gonna be like in, I don't know, Paulista or just like you said in downtown. You're not gonna be using your cell phone when walking around because you mentioned the bikes, right? Like, I mean, so there is this kind of I'm not say if we could say evolution or it's not an evolution, but it's like a variety of the pickpocket scheme. Like they're going to be riding their bicycles, and if you're using your cell phone, they're going to snatch from your hand, and they're just going to proceed riding, right? And you're not going to be able to catch up because you're going to be walking or running, and the guy's going to be riding. So that became almost like a plague, and it is a more common in certain areas or certain cities, but I would say there is such thing in São Paulo as well. So from the kind of common sense steps or precautions, like what would you tell to other foreign citizens, Jerry?
um, hmm, let's see. Other common sense things. I liked what you said about not using your cell phone, say strolling down the street, uh, unaware of your surroundings. But I think there's a big difference between Rio and the touristed areas there and Sao Paulo, which has far less tourism. Um, there's more of an immigrated population, such as Japanese and numerous places. It's a real melting pot here. Um, but if I saw something suspicious as I was walking down the street, uh, maybe a group of young males that looked aggressive or homeless people, I might cross to the other street. In Rio, in the touristed areas, I would uh, walk closer to the hotels that are lit up. And if I saw something I didn't like, I could go into the hotel and wait there, or just not walk deep into a neighborhood I didn't know where there was no commercial activity. It was perhaps late at night, but I'm kind of a big guy, um, and so I don't have the same considerations, I think, of, say, uh, females do. They would probably have a very different answer. Mine's very subjective. I tend to take Uber just about everywhere. I have been on Uber rides where the neighborhood I did not want to get out. That happened in Bahia, uh, not so much in São Paulo. Um, again, um, I think probably in the South there are, I imagine, even less of that happening. I think the small, quaint beach towns uh, that aren't uh, flooded with tourism probably are as safe as anywhere. It's not uh, on the top of my mind, but I think Americans who haven't been here are probably stigmatized by uh, Brazil being um, either dirty or crime ridden or that sort of picture. Um, I uh, believe there's some of that, but of course, if you have the means, it's pretty easy to avoid it by staying in nicer neighborhoods. Um, I love my neighborhood. It reminds me of like Greenwich Village, New York, or somewhere in a very livable part of Manhattan, um, the, without the
And
skyscrapers.
is that Jardins, Jerry?
I live close to Jardins. I'm on the other side of the park, uh, in a neighborhood known as Moema,
Moema,
uh,
right? Yeah.
Moema. And
Moema.
there's a
Yeah.
number of neighborhoods that are uh, in demand, um, pleasant, and low crime, good restaurants, and you can basically find anything you want in the neighborhood that you're in. So you're not forced into traffic, and in particular rush hour traffic uh, between 5 and 7. You can easily find yourself stuck traveling during that time period, trying to get to a neighborhood that's distant from yours, but uh, I there's a window of time where I can go to other neighborhoods with Uber. I should probably be using the metro, which is right next door, but the Uber, uh, the cars are very nice, and oftentimes you're befriended by the driver, which is something unusual. Brazilians are particularly curious. I think they're also flattered when you speak some of the language, um, and they're they're just tend to be friendly, open, and smiling, um, and not say sour that they're not as affluent as you are, or I don't see uh, people's grimacing or over their plight. Um, I see just so little of that. I also want to comment on their patience level. For being in a big city, I do not hear a lot of horns. I'm particularly sensitive to noise, and for me to live in a city, I would be pretty neurotic if there was horns constantly, as there are in many other places. Um, One story I like to tell is I, I, the elevator in my hotel requires a key and knowing what floor you're on. And there's been many times where the person is just checking in, they don't know how the key works, and they have to go all the way up to my floor, which is the 12th floor, before they go back down to their floor, which is the say the second floor. They've been traveling all day, and there's no sign of being upset or frustrated or angry over the fact that they didn't get their floor punched in on time. Sounds like something small, but to me, being an American, I would have an immediate visceral reaction to, oh God, I've got to go all the way up. Brazilians are very different in this regard. Uh, I don't know if it's something they've gotten used to. It's just part of their temperament, part of their disposition is they're not, they're, and part of the culture is there can be long lines for the post office, long lines for uh, concert tickets. Uh, I mean, there might be 500 people in that line for those concert tickets, but they, they, they're not anxiety ridden. I think they're, you know, as a neurotic person myself, somewhat, I would say that, you know, they're very different in that regard, which is very endearing. Um, they seem not to be focused on entirely on their future and strategizing about their future. It's more like enjoying the present moment, enjoying friendships, connections. I mean, they light up when they see their friends or family or coworkers. It's really something to experience the connections that they have. Uh, you know, cell phone usage is everywhere, and people are looking at their phones. But when you know, a little less here, but when they are talking to their friends, there's a certain passion that they bring to that conversation. Uh, I flew from New Zealand to Brazil, thanks to Luciano's advice that I could re-enter the country in December. And at the breakfast the hotel provided in New Zealand, it was very quiet. You could hear a pin drop, uh, and people were just on their phones and not very animated. And I thought, I miss the warmth and the excitement that is in Brazil. Uh, Although being sensitive to noise, I was thinking I would like uh, the quiet of a New Zealand. But when I got back from Brazil, I went to breakfast at my hotel, and it's you know as
Completely
loud
different, right?
as any place. And instead of complaining about it as I might in the past because of my sensibilities, I I learned that I missed it. Um, the, uh, their excitement is something that I can absorb, enjoy, appreciate, and um, and tamp down maybe my American tendency to complain about things not being perfect. Uh, Another such example is it gets hot here for 3 months out of the year, 4 months, say January to April, and I've kind of learned to just, okay, it's going to be 100 or it's going to be 95 out, to not feel like it's a death sentence. You know, just it is what it is. It's for 4 months, and be up for the challenge. In the same way that when I leave here and I go to Utah and it's 5 degrees or 0 degrees, I put up with cold. It's a question of in a large part having a better attitude about things. And I'd like to think that the Brazilians have influenced me in that regard to be more present, for sure, more patient, more accepting, more human, more warmth. I think there's an expression, calor humano.
Perfect.
That
Calor humano. Yep.
just learned it. Um, it's a thrill for me every day immersing myself in the language. I'm always with a piece of paper and pen and stuff. So I love the language. Um, some of the terms we've used for the cities sound intimidating, or the airport names. That's because there's been an Indian influence into the language and an African uh, influence. So some of those words don't sound anything like Spanish. If you do know Spanish, it's a huge advantage coming over to Portuguese. Uh, if you have never learned a second language, it's a very big step. Uh,
That's that's a
uh,
good point.
but I would say worth it in the long run. I think it.
Yes, Jerry. Particularly if you're considering the citizenship, because by contrast, like in the United States, sometimes people are going to attend a citizenship interview with a translator, right? Like technically, we should call it an interpreter, but the concept is that there's going to be someone helping with the language, right? Like, and for Brazil, you are actually required to have a fluency in the language. So
Wow.
you know what I mean? Like basic is not going to cut it, and intermediary is not going to cut it. So if citizenship is in your plans, in addition, like to keep you sharp and developing your mental skills, learning Portuguese is actually a requirement. Now, something interesting that I share with some clients, and they think it's almost fun. Brazil understands that not everyone is going to be able to learn Portuguese, so they offer a plan B, which is after 15 years in Brazil. If you haven't been able to learn Portuguese, they are going to let you apply for the citizenship without knowing Portuguese, right? Like it's almost like, listen, we tried, you don't get it. Let's give him the citizenship, but after 15 years, right? And like in Jerry's case, nowadays, I've been telling about that for a while. Like there is a change in federal administration since January of last year. They're changing the immigration framework substantially in some points, but as of today, we believe that the retirement visa, the one that Jerry has, it could give you access to citizenship after 4 years of living as a retiree in Brazil. Again, as long as you speak like advanced Portuguese, right? Like you actually need to speak, to write, to understand. But there you go. The language is so it's a plus on different fronts. We have here WS. Welcome, Bill. Bill never misses our live streams, and Bill is asking a question. I think this one I'm gonna need to take, but let's read Bill's question. How easy it is for Brazilians to get or carry weapons to protect themselves? Any options for foreigners to carry a weapon? So before I answer that, what's your take on weapons in Brazil, Jerry?
I would defer to you. I little to no knowledge on that.
Absolutely. So yeah, so in Brazil, Bill, is actually pretty difficult, even for us Brazilians, to obtain a license to carry a weapon. It's just not like I would say part of the culture for like regular citizens to have a weapon. And usually the government is going to require the person applying for a license to explain why they would need a weapon. So usual reasons would be, for instance, I have a liquor store, and there was robbery, I don't know, twice this year, and therefore I need a gun to protect myself, right? That would be an explanation. Another explanation would be like I am a public prosecutor, and I put bad guys in jail. They could come and kill me. Therefore, I need, a carry license. So it's gonna be something on these lines. There is no actually license per se. Like I'm applying because I'm free to have weapons, and like that's my personal take. I think it's a bit unfortunate because of course, there is a large number of weapons in Brazil, but they are usually not, with the police or the law-abiding citizens. They are with, like the bad guys. But it is what it is. So I'm just answering Bill's question. Bill, very difficult. Okay, and you as a foreign citizen, you would qualify to apply for a license once you are a permanent resident. Okay, so at Jerry's stage right now, Jerry is not a permanent resident. Jerry is a temporary resident. So even if he had like a reason to have a gun, he wouldn't be allowed to. But once you secure the permanent residency, you have like the same kind of status of a Brazilian when it comes to apply for a carry a license. And then yes, as long as you show cause, like, and then you're gonna get into an application process that can easily take like a year. It's not something that you're gonna handle at the store. It's something that you're going to need to apply in parallel. There's going to be like an extensive background check and so on. All right, Bill, I hope that answers. We have K2L. I assume you are a tax resident there. How do you find handling filing taxes in both countries? Also, how do you handle health insurance and health issues? So taxes and health. Like, what's your take on that, Jerry?
Um, well, in terms of taxes, I have yet to file because I just received my residency and I have not stayed here longer than 183 days within a calendar year that would require a tax return. Um, the Brazil is not considered a tax-friendly haven of a country. Uh, the Luciano could probably say more about that, but I believe uh, the effective tax rate is in the neighborhood of 26%, where
27.5. Yeah, like the
27 and a
maximum bracket.
half.
Yeah.
Mhm. Where in the U.S. I'm able, I live off of tax advantage investments that uh, allow my effective rate to be about half that. So if I do stay longer than 6 months this year, I will probably be paying uh, twice what I normally pay in my already very low taxable income. Uh, I, my income's not low. My tax rate is about half of what it is in Brazil. Um, it's not stopping me from staying here longer than 6 months. I will need to uh, show a Brazilian accountant my tax return as soon as it's done, which I have yet to do, and that would uh, tell me my liability. That would be we would be able to determine what my liability is going to be this year and into the future, so I can uh, better plan uh, for the time that I do stay longer than the 183-day residency rule. Um, from there, I believe I will need to hire a service that pays my estimated tax on a monthly basis. So, uh, again, another service I'll be using. Um, and right now, I'm trying to figure out whether I want to do that this year or defer it for another year. In terms of healthcare insurance, um, I tend to self-insure. Um, Probably not a great idea for a catastrophic event, um, but healthcare insurance for me in the States would be in the neighborhood of $1,000 a month with enrolled in the affordable care. Uh, in Brazil, I believe I'm entitled now to uh, public health insurance. Um, so there's that. Um, I have in the past insured myself while I was in the US because I take risks snowboarding in Utah. So during the winter, I would carry insurance costing 1,000 a month, which is based on my tax return, my taxable, adjusted taxable income in the U.S. So I feel like being here, there's a savings there in case something catastrophic happened here. I would be able to use hospital facilities here. Having not experienced that, I wouldn't know. I believe my bill would be a fraction of what it would be in the U.S. Uh, um, let's see. So yeah, that's the story with healthcare. I do wanted to add a couple things about retirement visa that the Brazilian government does want to see $2,000 in the form of a steady, regular income, which for some retirees, they choose to defer Social Security uh, and don't have a pension. And that was my case. So I ended up needing to file for Social Security early. I'm 63 to show the Brazilian government that I did have over $2,000 in regular income, and I'll need to show that again here within the year to receive my additional extension. I hope I answered that
Thank you
question.
for thank you for sharing, Jerry. Yes, it does help. A couple of strategies we see, like U.S. citizens using, just like Jerry said, once you become a resident, either permanent or not in Brazil, you would have access to the public health system. So there is a universal health system in Brazil, which is managed or which is a mandate from the federal government, but is actually handled or managed locally by the municipalities, right? And the point is, like in theory, you should have right, like access to pretty much anything you would need, from surgeries to consultations, to drugs and so on. The downside is that naturally it's a system that needs to take care of a lot of people. So the level of service or the quality of the service is not going to be the same as the quality you would experience if you were handling your health issues with a private provider, right? So like for foreign citizens living like in the Northeast in a small town, services may be sometimes faster and easier to access. If you are in a big town, in a big city such as São Paulo or Rio de Janeiro, sometimes you do have some issues with scheduling, like you could need to schedule something with several months up front, such as a surgery. And on the other hand, like private health insurance in Brazil is much more affordable than it is in the United States. So Jerry was sharing an example, like $1,000 a month. And I don't think, like if Jerry was to secure private health insurance in Brazil, I don't think he would pay half that, even even if he was choosing like the highest quality health insurance available in Brazil. So it's substantially more affordable. And even for the sake of comparing, like the 1,000 he said, it was actually carrying something from the government, right? Like is they call it was called Obamacare, right? But I understand the government does put some money in. Jerry, was there some subsidies or not really from the government for the 1,000 that you mentioned?
There was,
There
yeah.
was, right?
Again,
Okay,
because so much of my income is tax deferred or tax advantaged rather.
got
Uh,
it.
I was able to get that rate down to
Yeah,
that amount. My biggest fear would be something catastrophic,
catastrophic. Yeah,
and I feel like that part is handled, will be handled by, in the short term, a Brazilian hospital. I'm about 18 months away from qualifying for Medicare in the US. I'll be 65, and at that point, I would uh, probably take advantage of that. But again, in the interim, for the most part, I'm self-insured, uh, which is, can sound scary for some people, uh, but that's how I'm playing the insurance game. Um, Taking advantage of uh, Brazil hospitals and my Medicare in the future, and then having 3 months in which I use the affordable health care and pay the $1,000 a month. Um, one one thing I wanted to point out is how much access you have during your doctor visits. In the U.S., I've had knee surgeries in which and other things in which the doctor will come out and he's trying to spend a maximum of 5 minutes talking to me. At most, they'll spend 10 minutes. I know this because I record the conversations, because a lot of what they say can be over my head at times. But contrasting that to a Brazilian doctor visit is much less rushed. I've gone to chiropractors and spent an hour talking about having my questions answered. Dermatologists here are much more accessible. In the States, I was waiting 3 months, 4 months to see a dermatologist. Here, you can make one in the same week. It feels like here in Sao Paulo, very qualified. Brazilians are very conscious of their appearance, at least in the major cities where they can afford things like plastic surgery or various procedures in which they have to pay out of pocket, and they get experienced people. I think Brazil is pretty neck and neck with U.S. standards. It was above U.S. standards in plastic surgery and various skincare kinds of treatments. But it's very refreshing and reassuring to have a doctor who's not rushed, spending a full hour with you, answering all of your questions. Uh, I'm getting a physical now and talking to a doctor, and you know, it, they allow me to speak either my pidgin Portuguese or English. It's optional, and it's pleasant. I get my questions answered, and I don't feel limited to 5 and 10 minute office visits. So, big plus for life here on that front.
thank you for sharing, Jerry. So Bill is asking, thank you for being here. Actually, Jerry, thank you for being here. Bill is saying, please excuse me, what is your age?
63.
63 now, Jerry. Uh, STG 80, can I open a LLC and pay myself 2,500 to qualify for the visa? I'm not retired. So STG, the qualifying income for the retirement visa is actually income coming from a retirement source. So most of the income should come from something like, either Social Security or a pension fund. It could be even annuities, but it must be a retirement related. You can have a salary and qualify for the retirement. On the other hand, if you have an LLC and you're going to be hiring and paying yourself 2,500, you would qualify for the digital nomad, right? The digital nomad, it gives you like a first year that can be renewed for a second year, and that's usually enough as a bridge for you to find other routes. Bill says, thank you, Luciano. You're welcome, Bill. Thank you for the support. Jerry, I know, our time here is almost up. I just want to ask you something else, which is kind of a repetitive question I hear from other foreign citizens. Or, like, I mean, why should I pick Brazil over Portugal, for instance, right? Like, I mean, usually when people are shopping around for destinations, they also find out about Portugal. And in Portugal, you also speak Portuguese. And actually, the Brazilian culture is somewhat spin-off of the Portuguese culture. There is a still nowadays like a close connection between the two countries, and Portugal is also becoming a retirement destination for U.S. citizens, right? So have you? So my question for you is like, have you considered Portugal, or I don't know if you know Portugal, or if you don't know Portugal, you could maybe think about Europe, right, in general. But why Brazil over Portugal or Europe as a retirement destination, in your opinion?
Well, my single answer would be the people, um, the the curiosity, they they're 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 very positive, at least in the locales that I frequent. I think the question is subjective. I know that there's a lot of people moving, or there were a lot of people moving to Portugal. I think their visa requirements have changed recently, and there's less of that. Uh, I also speak French, and one of my dreams was to live in France. Um, Although I hear from people around the world who come back from their country having tried to live in France and finding that the people weren't as warm and open and curious, and allowing them to make mistakes in the language the way the Brazilians do. Um, and even in my own country, when I go back to Utah, I notice uh, the lack of warmth towards strangers. Not everyone. I would say it's an 80-20 kind of thing where 80% of the Brazilians are friendly, and maybe 20% of the Americans that I meet uh, um, are as friendly as I would like them to be. I mean, I grew up in the 70s, and I grew up on the East Coast, and I just have very fond memories of having uh, friendships and uh, people being open and chatty and conversational, and I miss that. I find that. I think I'm finding it here. Uh, there's something about seeing a smiling face from a stranger over and over consistently. Uh, when you enter a shop, the even the help inside the hotel, all of these interactions that I have, and I probably have a dozen of those a day or more. I like to go to the mall and buy things, and just the brief interaction it is wonderful. I mean, sometimes I'll go to a wine shop and I'll talk to the owner, and he seems to have all the time of the day and focused on me as if there's no one else in the store. it's those kinds of exchanges uh, that are kind of heartfelt, and um, I would recommend someone seeing that. Uh, I would also recommend that they visit other places for, say, 2 weeks or a month at a time to feel the vibe of the area, uh, and try add Brazil to that list, um, and not just limit yourself to, say, Rio because there's a beach. There are even better beach towns. I was talking to my language teacher today, and she loves a place called Paraty, which is Paraty.
Parati. Yeah.
Parti. Okay. And that has a small town kind of feel, doesn't get a lot of tourists, but it's beautiful. Um, there are day trips you can take from that destination. So uh, I have not been to Portugal. I have heard of Brazilians returning from Portugal and not having as much uh, fun as they thought, missing Brazil, trying to live in Portugal. Um, I'm looking forward to one day going there. Uh, I'd like to wait and see if all my well-traveled friends that I'm meeting here go, and then I'll tag along with them. That's kind of how
That's
yeah.
that's great. Jerry, so sorry if I mispronounced it. Is Parati, just like you said, and that's a small. It was a fisherman village, right? Like in the state of Rio de Janeiro, and I mean it's in between like São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. Paraty is almost like at the border, and there is another destination which is close by, which is very popular, is Angra dos Reis, right? Like I'm gonna write over here in our chat window, Angra dos Reis. And I've been to both places like many times. I do love like they have like a smaller town kind of a feel is very different than Rio de Janeiro in general, right? Like the city of Rio de Janeiro, Copacabana, Leblon, Ipanema. Like I mean, Paraty and Angra dos Reis, it has the same beauty that you would find in the city of Rio de Janeiro, but in a smaller, more with calor humano, right? The phrase that Jerry brought, like the warmth, this kind of, like a smaller community sense. So, that's certainly a great sharing. Interesting perspective on Europe, and I agree. We know, many Brazilians who go to Portugal because, of course, the language, right? Like they don't need to learn Portuguese because we speak Portuguese. But I mean, there is still, although the Brazilian culture, at the end of the day, is a spin-off of the European, of the Portuguese culture, but it is still very different because of probably the indigenous and African influence, right? Like that are a very important part of our culture. So, yes, I mean, we come like from Portugal, but at the end of the day, we're very different, and there is more calor humano in Brazil, just like Jerry is saying, I believe. So that explains a lot. I want to thank you very much, Jerry. It was very enlightening. Thank you for answering our audience's questions, very thoroughly. And I hope to have an opportunity in the future again to have you in our channel, Jerry. Any final words for our audience?
Anytime. Thank you for that offer. It was a pleasure to reflect on uh, why I'm here. I feel very blessed to be here. I would say that someone on a budget uh, could definitely come here and find lodging and food options uh, that would improve their um, lifestyle, and it's accessible in that. way, uh, I would particularly encourage someone that's already a Spanish speaker. Um, the language is important to me. Only only about 5% of Brazilians speak English. Uh, but however, most of them do know basic English. So be uh, uh, I wouldn't be afraid of coming here. Uh, but a few words would go a long way. So if you could learn about, I don't know, a dozen words in Portuguese, like thank you, hello, goodbye, how are you, it would be very worthwhile to experience. Also, just wanted to say, just appearance-wise, that Brazil is kind of a melting pot of uh, appearance-wise in terms of, I mean, there's there's Russians here, there's Japanese here, there's a mixture. I mean, you can't pin down what a Brazilian looks like because it's just such a melting pot. Uh, and for that reason, I mean, you see a lot of exotic people walking around, dressed up and taking care of their appearance. And it's, I think that might be different than what people imagine when they think of Brazil. Sao Paulo is a very modern city, and there's a lot of beautiful people here, uh, and it's a big melting pot of cultures. So if I hope that it excites some of the listeners to want to visit.
Such a great sharing. Thank you so much, Jerry. Thank you again. We're going to be here for you whenever you need us. You were very generous about your comments on our services. We are actually the blessed ones by having a wonderful client like you. And whenever you need us, we're going to be here for you. Thank you for the audience, and we're going to be back to the channel on Sunday, just as usual at 3:30. On Sunday, we're not gonna have any guests, so we're gonna be able to address. We have a lot of people who show up over here to discuss about technical aspects of immigration, of Brazil in general. So if you have your topics of interest, come here again on Sunday, and we're gonna be here to discuss your topics of interest. Thank you again, Jerry, and have a blessed rest of your day.
Thanks, Luciano. You too.
Bye.
Bye.